The restaurant buzzed with the usual dinner crowd, clinking glasses and low murmurs blending into a warm symphony of life. At a corner table, a man in a simple jacket and worn jeans sat quietly, scanning the menu. No one knew that beneath the modest exterior was a millionaire who had chosen to live anonymously, searching for meaning beyond money. When he ordered his steak, nothing seemed unusual, until the waitress returned, her hands trembling slightly as she slipped a folded note onto his plate. He opened it casually, but the words inside froze him mid-breath, sending a chill straight to his soul. The man's name was Daniel Cross, a self-made millionaire whose face had never graced a magazine cover. He had built his empire from scratch, tech startups, smart investments, and years of relentless work. But as his bank accounts swelled, something inside him hollowed out. The laughter faded from his life, friendships became transactions, and every smile he saw seemed bought, not earned. So he disappeared. No press release, no farewell party. He vanished from the boardrooms into the streets of ordinary life, determined to rediscover what mattered. He sold his mansion, left the sports cars in a dusty garage, and packed a single suitcase. For months, he drifted through towns no one had heard of, living like a ghost in plain sight. Tonight, his wandering had brought him to a cozy roadside steakhouse, a place where the neon lights flickered against the black canvas of night. It smelled of sizzling meat and fresh bread, the kind of honest aroma that could make even the wealthiest man crave simplicity. Daniel sat in the farthest corner booth away from the main crowd. His jeans had faded, his boots carried the dust of 100 miles, and his jacket looked like it had weathered storms. No one would guess that the man studying the menu could buy the entire restaurant 10 times over. That's how he wanted it. He wanted to feel invisible, to live without the weight of expectations or the constant hum of business deals. When the waitress arrived, she greeted him with a smile that felt genuine, a rarity he had almost forgotten. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, with tired eyes that hinted at long shifts and heavier burdens. Her name tag read Emily. She took his order, a medium-rare steak, mashed potatoes, and black coffee, and walked away with an ease that told him she treated every customer the same. No flattery, no pretense. As Daniel waited, he looked around the room. Couples laughed over shared desserts, families clinked glasses, and friends told stories that spilled into roaring laughter. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't looking at stock tickers or quarterly reports. He was looking at life, raw, unpolished, and beautiful in its simplicity. Emily returned with his coffee first, placing it gently on the table. "Steak will be out in a few," she said with a warm smile. Daniel nodded, grateful for the human connection, no matter how small. He took a sip of the bitter brew and felt something loosen inside his chest. 10 minutes later, the steak arrived, perfectly cooked, seared to golden perfection. But Daniel barely noticed the food because when Emily set the plate down, her hand lingered just a fraction too long. And then he saw it, a small folded note resting on the edge of the plate, partly tucked beneath the steak knife. Emily walked away quickly, her shoulders stiff, her pace hurried. Daniel stared at the note for a moment, unsure whether to open it. Curiosity gnawed at him until finally he unfolded the paper. His heart stopped as his eyes traced the trembling handwriting. "Please help me. My life is in danger." Daniel read the words again, his pulse thundering in his ears. "Please help me. My life is in danger." The letters were jagged, pressed so hard into the paper that they nearly tore through. He glanced up instinctively, scanning the room for Emily. She was back at the counter, her posture composed but her hands fidgeting as if she were trying to keep them still. His mind raced. Was this a prank? A misunderstanding? Or something darker, something real? Daniel had spent years negotiating billion-dollar deals, dissecting lies, reading faces. And right now, everything in his gut screamed this was no joke. He slipped the note into his jacket pocket just as Emily turned toward him. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and in that moment he saw it: fear. Not the mild anxiety of someone overwhelmed at work. No, this was primal, urgent, the kind of fear you can't fake. She broke the gaze immediately and walked away, disappearing into the kitchen. Daniel leaned back in his seat, masking the storm inside him. He picked up his fork, pretending to focus on the steak, but his appetite had vanished. He was calculating, planning. What could he do without drawing attention? Who was threatening her? His eyes scanned the restaurant. There were 7 other tables occupied, 2 elderly couples, a family of 4, a group of 3 men in worn leather jackets, and a man sitting alone near the exit, watching everything a little too closely. Daniel noted the way that man barely touched his drink, how his eyes followed Emily every time she moved. A cold certainty settled over him. Whoever Emily feared was likely in this room. Daniel reached into his pocket and felt the note again, as if touching it might give him clarity. He knew one thing: he couldn't ignore it. Years of boardroom battles had sharpened his instincts, but this was different. This wasn't about money or power. This was about a life hanging by a thread. Emily returned briefly to refill his coffee. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the pot down. Daniel seized the moment. He murmured, almost inaudibly, "I got your note. Tell me what's going on." Her face froze for a fraction of a second before a practiced smile replaced it. "Enjoy your meal," she whispered, and walked away without looking back. Daniel's jaw tightened. She couldn't talk here. That much was clear. Whoever she feared had ears everywhere. When she disappeared into the kitchen again, Daniel made a decision. He pulled out his phone and pretended to scroll, but in reality, he was activating a discreet emergency app he had installed long ago for personal security. One tap sent his location and an alert to a private security firm he still retained, even in his low-profile life. They'd come, but they'd need time, and Emily didn't look like she had much of it. He set the phone down and took a slow breath, forcing calm into his system. Then he caught something in the mirror behind the bar, a reflection of that lone man by the exit pulling out his phone, speaking into it briefly, eyes still fixed on the kitchen door where Emily had gone. Daniel's stomach knotted. This wasn't random. It was controlled, deliberate, and he was in the middle of it now. The question was, how far was he willing to go to help a stranger? Daniel's mind shifted into overdrive. Years of building empires had taught him the value of discretion, timing, and precision, and right now, every second mattered. He pushed his plate aside, wiped his mouth, and rose casually as though heading to the restroom. His movements were deliberate, calm, nothing to draw suspicion. As he walked past the bar, he used the mirrored surface again, checking the man near the exit. Still there, still watching the kitchen door like a hawk. Whoever he was, Daniel doubted he was here for the prime rib special. Inside the restroom, Daniel locked the door and pulled out his phone again. His security team had responded 10 minutes out. Do not engage. 10 minutes. That might as well be a lifetime. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. A tailored suit, polished shoes, the image of control. But beneath that calm surface, adrenaline coursed through him like a storm. He wasn't used to waiting for someone else to solve problems. He solved them. That's what had made him who he was. The billionaire nobody recognized because he'd chosen a life of anonymity. He slid the phone back into his pocket and returned to the dining room. As he stepped out, the hum of conversation washed over him, but it couldn't mask the tension in the air. The man near the exit had shifted in his chair, now leaning forward, his gaze sharp and unyielding. Daniel felt it like a physical weight. Emily emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray, her smile brittle. She avoided Daniel's eyes as she served another table, but when she turned to pass him, her lips moved almost imperceptibly. Parking lot. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. She wanted to meet outside. Smart move. Less risk of being overheard, but also more dangerous if someone followed. He sat back down, forcing himself to appear relaxed. The man near the exit was on the move now, pretending to glance at his watch as he stood. He walked toward the restroom slowly, deliberately, but his eyes weren't on the hallway. They flicked once toward Emily and then toward the front door. Daniel realized 2 things in that instant. Whoever this man was, he wasn't alone, and he was about to make a move. Emily placed the tray down at another table and headed toward the back door, which Daniel knew led to the parking lot. His instinct screamed at him to follow immediately, but charging after her would be too obvious. He waited a beat, then 2, then rose with a casual grace that belied the pounding in his chest. As he walked toward the back, he caught sight of another man he hadn't noticed before. A broad-shouldered figure standing near the exit to the kitchen, pretending to check his phone. 2 men now, maybe more outside. The air in the restaurant felt heavier, like the moment before a storm breaks. Daniel's mind ran through scenarios: confrontation, escape routes, leverage. His hand brushed against the inside pocket of his jacket where a slim metal pen rested, a gift from a security consultant years ago. It wasn't just a pen. It was a tool. He pushed open the back door and stepped into the night. The parking lot was dimly lit, shadows stretching long under flickering lamps. Emily stood near a silver sedan, her posture tense, her head snapping toward him the moment he appeared. Relief flashed in her eyes, but only for an instant. Because behind her, stepping out from the darkness, were two men. And they weren't here for dinner. Daniel's pulse thundered as the door clicked shut behind him. He was in it now, and there was no turning back. The cool night air hit Daniel's face like a warning. The parking lot stretched out in eerie silence, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the soft buzz of a flickering streetlight. Emily stood frozen beside her car, her eyes darting between Daniel and the two men emerging from the shadows. Their strides were slow, deliberate, predators closing in on prey. "Daniel?" Emily's voice cracked as she whispered his name, as if saying it might somehow protect him. "Stay calm," he murmured, his tone steady even as his mind raced. He assessed the men, both tall, muscular, dressed in dark clothes that screamed anything but coincidence. The one on the left had a scar cutting across his jawline, the kind you don't get from slipping in the shower. "What do you want?" Daniel called out, keeping his voice strong and clear. He stepped forward, placing himself between Emily and the approaching figures. One of them smirked. "Funny question, considering you already know the answer." Daniel said nothing. Information was power, and right now silence was his weapon. The man with the scar moved closer, his boots crunching against gravel. "You've been a ghost for years, Mr. Reeves. Disappearing like that after you pulled your little stunt. Impressive. But you should have stayed gone." Daniel's jaw tightened. They knew his name. They knew his past, which meant this wasn't random. It was personal. Emily gripped his arm. "Daniel, what's happening?" He gave her the faintest glance, enough to reassure her without breaking focus. "Get in the car," he whispered. "No," she breathed, her voice trembling. "Not without you." The second man pulled something from his jacket, a glint of metal under the dim light. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears, but his face stayed calm. In a world like his, panic was death. "Looks like you made a mistake showing your face," the man sneered. Daniel let out a slow breath and shifted his weight ever so slightly. His fingers brushed the pen in his pocket, the innocuous little tool that wasn't a pen at all. He'd hoped never to need it again, but hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. With a flick of his wrist, the pen snapped open into a tactical blade. Before either man could react, Daniel lunged, not toward them, but toward the car, grabbing Emily and shoving her behind the open door as the first man surged forward. The blade flashed under the harsh glow of the streetlight, slicing across the man's arm. He roared in pain, staggering back. The second man raised the gun, but Daniel was already moving. Years of training, buried under boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, came roaring back like muscle memory. He twisted low, the shot cracking the night as he slammed into the man's legs, sending the gun skittering across the pavement. "Run!" Daniel shouted. Emily bolted toward the far end of the lot, her footsteps echoing like gunfire. Daniel scrambled for the gun, but the first man was on him again, blood dripping from his arm, fury burning in his eyes. They grappled, a brutal dance of survival in the glow of the flickering lamps. Daniel slammed the man against the car, the impact rattling metal, then drove an elbow into his gut. The man crumpled with a grunt. Daniel snatched the gun and swung it toward the second man, who froze mid-charge. For a breathless moment, the world held still. "Tell whoever sent you." Daniel growled, his voice low and lethal. "They'll never find me. And if they try—" He cocked the gun, the sound sharp in the night. "I won't miss next time." The man hesitated, then backed away, dragging his wounded partner with him. They melted into the darkness, leaving silence in their wake. Daniel lowered the gun slowly, his chest heaving. Emily appeared at the edge of the lot, her face pale, eyes wide. What was that?" she whispered. Daniel tucked the gun into his jacket, his expression hard but calm. "A mistake from my past, one I thought I'd buried." He glanced toward the distant headlights of his security team pulling in. Emily stared at him, fear and trust battling in her eyes. "Who are you, really?" Daniel gave a faint smile, the kind that held more secrets than answers. "Just a man who came in for a steak," he said softly. "But it seems dinner's over." As the black SUVs rolled to a stop, Daniel reached for Emily's hand, guiding her towards safety. The night had ended, but the war it hinted at had only just begun. And deep down, Daniel knew this wasn't the last time his past would come knocking.